The night Tombstone held its breath was colder than a preacher's stare. A single gunshot tore through the midnight silence, echoing across Allen Street like a warning from hell itself. By dawn, the town's most respected man lay face down in the dust, Sheriff Eli Carter. His badge glimmered faintly beneath the rising sun, like it still had something left to say. The papers called it a drunken ambush. The deputies called it justice served. But those who stood in the shadows that night, they whispered something else. Something darker. There was no blood on Eli's hands when they found him. No struggle. No trail. Just one clean bullet through the heart and his revolver, fully loaded, resting by his side. For a man known for never letting danger walk closer than 10 paces, that was the first thing that didn't make sense. And yet, the town swallowed the story whole. Quick. Neat. No questions asked. Because in Tombstone, sometimes the truth was more dangerous than the lie. What no one knew then, what history never recorded, was that Eli Carter's death wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of one. A secret buried beneath dust, greed, and betrayal. And before the sun would set again, that secret would drag the town's soul into the grave with him. The morning after the sheriff's death, Tombstone wore an unease that clung to every wall like stale smoke. The saloons kept their doors half shut, gamblers whispered over empty tables, and even the horses seemed restless beneath the clouded sky. Deputy Thomas Graves took charge, a man with sharp eyes but a quieter mouth. He'd ridden with Eli for 7 years, through shootouts, mining disputes, and more hangings than he cared to count. But that morning, when he stood over Eli's body on the cold wooden slab behind the undertaker's, something behind his stare flickered. Not grief. Not rage. Something else. He reached into Eli's coat and found a folded note tucked inside the lining. The handwriting was Eli's, steady, deliberate, but the words were short. If I fall, look to the courthouse. No signature. No date. Just that. Thomas burned the note in a nearby lantern before anyone else saw it. Then he exhaled slowly, like a man who'd just seen a ghost. Across town, whispers grew legs. Some said Eli had debts. Others claimed a lover's quarrel turned deadly. But a few old-timers, men who remembered the days before law came to Tombstone, muttered a different story, a story about something hidden beneath the courthouse. Gold. Documents. Secrets. As dusk crept in, Thomas walked alone down Fremont Street. The lamps flickered like dying stars, and somewhere, a harmonica played a sorrowful tune. He paused at the courthouse steps. There, on the ground, lay a single brass button. It wasn't Eli's. It belonged to a deputy's uniform. And in that silent moment, Thomas understood one thing: the bullet that killed Eli hadn't come from outside Tombstone. It had come from within. The next evening, Tombstone's courthouse stood like a silent judge beneath a blood-red sky. Thomas returned under the cover of night, his boots crunching on gravel as he slipped through a side door he'd unlocked years ago during a smuggler's raid. The hallways smelled of paper, dust, and something faintly metallic, like old blood that no one had bothered to clean. He lit a lantern low, careful to keep the flame small. Eli had spent countless nights here, poring over land records, mining claims, and witness statements. Thomas knew where every loose floorboard lay, every creaking hinge. But that night, something felt wrong. He reached Eli's office and found the door ajar. Inside, a single window was cracked open, the cold wind stirring the papers on the sheriff's desk like restless spirits. Among the mess was a file Thomas had never seen before, marked only with the letter C. He flipped it open. Inside were copies of deeds, signatures, and maps pointing toward a strip of land just beyond town, a dry ravine no one cared for. But the signatures, one name stood out: Judge Samuel Hargrove. Thomas frowned. Hargrove had arrived in Tombstone 3 years prior, a man who preached order but built his fortune quietly in the shadows. Eli had trusted him, or so everyone thought. A sound snapped Thomas's focus. Footsteps. Soft but deliberate. He snuffed out the lantern and stepped back into the hallway, Colt in hand. A figure moved at the far end, tall, wearing a deputy's coat. For a heartbeat, Thomas almost called out. Then the figure turned, and the lantern light caught the brass buttons. One was missing. The same button from the courthouse steps. The figure slipped out the rear door like smoke. Thomas didn't follow, not yet. But in that moment, a chilling truth took root. Someone in Eli's own ranks had walked these halls on the night he died, and they weren't done yet. The town buried Sheriff Eli Carter under a sky so gray it looked carved from stone. The whole of Tombstone gathered on Boot Hill, hats lowered, whispers carried on the wind like confessions. Thomas stood at the edge of the crowd, hands clasped behind his back, scanning faces instead of mourning. Deputies lined the front, 8 men sworn to uphold the law. Among them, one pair of brass buttons glimmered unevenly. He didn't need to check, he already knew who it belonged to. Deputy Cole Turner. Young, ambitious, and loyal to whoever kept his pockets warm. Cole's eyes flicked toward Thomas for the briefest moment. No grief. No fear. Just a measured glance, the kind a man gives when deciding whether to shoot or smile. That night, Thomas returned to Eli's office with a plan. He pried open the floorboards beneath the sheriff's desk, an old hiding place they'd used during the Apache raids. What he found there made his breath hitch. A small leather journal, its pages covered in Eli's tight script. The last entry was dated 2 nights before the murder. Hargrove's men think I don't see. They think I'll stay quiet like the rest. But the deeds are forged, and they plan to take the ravine before the railroad comes through. It's blood money. If they move against me, they'll do it from inside. Thomas closed the journal slowly. Inside job. Land theft. A conspiracy reaching higher than any outlaw gang. And Eli had stood alone against it. Suddenly, the sound of boots echoed in the hallway. Not hurried, confident. The door creaked open. Cole stood there, a revolver low at his side, lantern light cutting across his face. Long night, deputy, he drawled. Thomas didn't answer. But in the silence that followed, something shifted. The murder wasn't just a question anymore. It was a storm rolling in. And everyone in Tombstone was standing in its path. The night settled over Tombstone like a black shroud. Inside the sheriff's office, the lantern between Thomas and Cole burned low, casting their faces in trembling amber. The journal lay open on the desk, a silent witness. Cole took one step forward, revolver hanging loose at his side, like a snake waiting to strike. You shouldn't go pokin' where Eli left off, he said softly. He didn't listen, and look where that got him. Thomas's voice was steady. You killed him. Cole's grin spread slow, cruel. Me? No. I just opened the door. The air tightened. Thomas's fingers brushed the butt of his Colt. Cole noticed, eyes narrowing. Judge Hargrove gave the order. Eli was gonna blow the whole land deal wide open. Railroad's comin' through that ravine. Anyone who owns it gets rich. Eli was stubborn. Thought law meant something here. Thomas's heart pounded, but his face stayed cold. And you? What's loyalty worth to you, Cole? Cole tilted his head. Enough gold to leave this rotten town behind. He raised his gun. Thomas drew. 2 shots cracked through the night, one hit the wall, the other found its mark. Cole staggered back, eyes wide, before crumpling to the floor. The echo rolled through Tombstone like thunder. Within minutes, boots pounded the boardwalk outside. Deputies burst in, guns raised, but when they saw Cole's body and the journal in Thomas's hands, silence swallowed the room. By dawn, the courthouse was full. Thomas laid the journal on the judge's desk, voice clear and hard as iron. Eli Carter died for the law. Tonight, it speaks for him. Hargrove tried to smile his way out, but the evidence was carved deep. The forged deeds, the witnesses who found courage in the wake of gunfire, it all came pouring out. By sundown, the judge's gavel fell for the last time, not in power but in chains. As the sun bled over the horizon, Thomas stood alone at Eli's grave. The wind whispered through the dry grass like a prayer. He tipped his hat low. Justice took its time, old friend, he murmured. But it rode in. Justice took its time, old friend, he murmured. But it rode in. It simply remembered. Because in Tombstone, law wasn't written in ink, it was carved in blood and dust, and some men made sure it stayed that way.